Hello, classmates, dear Professor Olga, and the whole community of YouTube in general. I hope you are doing well during these quarantine days, trying to face this COVID-19 virus that is affecting our country and the whole world. But please stay at home, keep safe for your families and for yourself. But at this opportunity, we are not going to talk about this issue. We are going to go deep into a very important topic in the landscape of educational research that is called mixed method design, or also known with other name that is also mixed methods approach. So are the same thing. So okay, I'm Santiago Garcia Luna. I am a fifth semester student of the Industrial University of Santander, and I am part of the program of foreign languages with emphasis in English. So along with my partner, with my delivery partner that unfortunately is not here physically, but is going to appear later on the video, that is como dice Pájaro. Both we are going to talk about the principal characteristics, the principal types of mixed method research designs, and other important aspects that we consider that should be taken board. So I hope you like this presentation and all the effort that we are trying to put in order to make it real. So thank you. So, okay, before moving on to the part of giving the definition of what is mixed method research design, I think it's important to make a little of contextualization of the topic in order to see how mixed methods approaches and designs happen in a lot of different trends inside the community. For example, look at this image and this image. Okay, you might think that there are no differences between them, that they are completely different, doesn't have nothing in common, but the thing is that they concern about the same topic, that is glaciers. And okay, in this case we are taking into account this image to represent the numerical and statistic part of understanding the problem of how glaciers have been reduced due to global warming. And then we can see pictures demonstrating the real state of glaciers around the world. So we are combining, in this case, quantitative and in this case qualitative information to explain or understand a topic better. So this can also happen like in news, when the news are presenting statistical numbers, and at the same time they are presenting the interviews of stories in order to represent these numerical statistics inside the society with real stories that are telling by real people. So in this case, we are taking into account different assumptions to take advantages in order to produce a very good explaining of a topic using qualitative and quantitative. So we are mixing it. So now that thing happened like in the same way in the field of educational research. So what is mixed method designs in research? So according to Kurzweil, one of the fathers of the implementation of mixed method research designs, are defined as a mixed method research design is a procedure for collecting, analyzing, and mixing both qualitative and quantitative methods in a single study or a series of studies to understand a research problem. So that is what is stated by Kurzweil in his book Educational Research in 2012. So we can say that the basic assumption of mixed method research designs is when you embed literally mix both qualitative and quantitative forms of collecting data. And also you don't only need to see this, that also that we mix this kind of qualitative and quantitative in only one part. No, we can see that we can mix the whole assumption with the theoretical and the philosophical assumption from both in order to understand better some problems that happen in our society. So Kurzweil also considered that it is better to combine two methods that are going to produce a better understanding of a specific research problem instead of one method itself. So what is being mixed? So Cohen et al. 2018 say that okay, we tend to mix always in a mixed method research designs the methods that are of course qualitative and quantitative, that are the basic ones when you are conducting educational research, and also the methodologies that comprehend about the population that this kind of approaches use, how they collect the data, how they analyze the data, the instruments that they use at the time of collecting the data, of gathering the data, and also the paradigms that are the philosophical assumptions that, okay, in quantitative is positivism or positivism only, and in qualitative is that the one that is structural or organizational. And also the advantages or disadvantages. So we need to consider that when we are talking about mixed method research designs, okay, qualitative and quantitative are truly mixed. So it is important to take these ideas into account. So there, in order to better explain that there are cases that where it is not necessary to convey all of these trends, that for example, according to the research question, you can only need to convey to make a combination of the paradigms or the methodologies or the methods. So for example, example of a mixed method research design inside a educational process could be like, okay, a person called, for example, Mariana is trying to make a research study in a high school, and the research question is about the influences that might affect the think of the students about the possession of weapons inside the classroom. And then he can pilot like a survey or an experiment to demonstrate the quantitative part. In the follow-up, the qualitative part, Mariana could say, okay, I want to establish an open-ended question. That is like one of the basic instruments of qualitative studies. And Mariana could ask, okay, when the students say peers in their answers of the previous survey, what do they mean? So they can also collect qualitative, and they can process this information in a qualitative way in order to support or give a better explanation of the quantitative data that was previously collected. So in this case, you are only mixing the instruments that concern in the methodology part of what you should be mixed inside mixed method research designs. So now we are going to see the part. Okay, I would like to clarify what is not a mixed method research design, because it is important that you understand the difference between what is a real mixed method research design and what is like a fake mixed method research design. Not only take advantage of the name of mixed method research design in order to improve the validity of the study. So for example, simply using the name without the rigorous procedure, okay, we can find kind of experiments that has the background related to qualitative and quantitative data, but they don't support it through the methodology and through the data collection. So there is not the rigorous procedures behind the theory. So this is not a mixed method research design. Also, collecting and reporting qualitative and quantitative separately and having qualitative and quantitative data available. So in the first case, if you are having the qualitative and quantitative data available, okay, we can have it, but if we don't know how to use it or how to increase the scope of the experiment or how to take advantage by mixing in, embedding in, or analyzing in, it's not a very good mixed method research design. Also, we cannot have, we can have maybe the two data collection separately, but we need to try to make like, okay, we need to that one part of the qualitative supports the quantitative or vice versa in order that we are having a truly mixed method research designs, and also using multiple quantitative approaches or qualitative approaches in the same study. So if we are having, for example, a survey and the follow-up is a quasi-experiment or an experiment, this is not a really mixed method research design. So this is only like a multi-method research that is combining the same trends but using the same methodology. No, the idea is that you have one part qualitative and one part quantitative, not two parts of the same thing. So now we are going to talk about a little about the background of what is mixed method design. Okay, how the idea of mixed method research design developed through the time. So at the beginning of the last century, in the 30s, some researchers related to studies about biology, geology, epistemology started to consider that sometimes the quantitative part wasn't enough or sufficient to increase or to validate the social phenomenon that they are looking into at. So, but until the 70s is when they started to consider the implementation of one more method or two or three different kind of data collections. So for example, the first example in the history is in the 1959 when Campbell and Fisk, two Finland investigators, developed the multi-train multi-medium matrix, or also known by the acronym MTTM. So in this chart, the idea is that they started to compare different variables that were tested before by three different kind of methodologies. So these kind of methodologies were star ratings, dimmer ratings, and cell ratings. So they started to put all the results that the three methodologies drop, and they put it into the matrix in order to see how the variables are related or how the variables are approached in order to analyze the same phenomenon. So for example, if we see that this methodology and this doesn't have a lot of relations, so we can cancel this or this and only focus on these two that have more relationships. So in this kind of matrix, these investigators use only quantitative data, because at that time qualitative data doesn't have the enough prestige or kudos to be implemented. So they consider like not a very good idea of combining or doing a methodology seriously. So, but this kind of matrix was like the first example of how a phenomenon can be analyzed by using different kind of methodologies and data collection, even if it is only quantitative. So in 1973, it was when they started to consider more seriously the qualitative part, and they started to pilot study cases when they started to use piloting surveys follow up with very good constructor interviews. And so in this way we can see how they started to combine qualitative and quantitative, because they considered that it was better to see the problem using two different perspectives. And in 1979 it was when the premise of how nowadays we see mixed method research approach, that was the emerge of the idea of triangulation. So this idea was called after the military position that some soldiers take. They have two soldiers and the same objective, so they are like making the figure of a triangle. So there is something that happens not literally but significantly in the way of research designs, that you put your research phenomenon at the top of the triangle and the qualitative and quantitative part at the bottom, so you are making in your mind like a triangle figure. So that's why they decided to call it like triangulation. And one example is when Fisk, that is the ones who implemented triangulation, is that this investigator wanted to construct an experiment that tend to see the factors that in a company some workers make them produce more anxiety while they are working. So they started to see, but in previous studies there were previous studies that were about the same thing, but they did it like with different methodologies. So, for example, they discovered the causes of what these workers feel stressed and anxious during the work by doing observations, and in other previous study they did it the same by doing with quantitative data, and in other studies they did it the same but by physically exams. So these investigators say, okay, if I have these methodologies, why I have to limit it myself by only using one methodology instead of using more methodologies? So that is when the idea of triangulation appeared. Also, we have the premise that is more common in triangulation nowadays is the concurrent triangulation design. That is when you use two methods to confirm, cross-validate, or corroborate findings within a study. So the only possibilities that we have are only two to make that the figure on the triangle in your mind. Remember that, the figure. And also we have that the data collected is concurrent. That happens at the same time. So when you start collecting the quantitative part, you have to start also trying to see how you can collect the quantitative part separately, and then you see to what extent these like imaginary lines meet in order to make the figure of the triangle. And the analysis occurs always after you have done the whole procedure of the collecting and analyzing the qualitative and quantitative part. So triangulation can happen in multiple forms. According to the research question, that is like the brain of all the research studies nowadays. So you can say that, okay, it is only necessary to make the triangulation of the methods, or only the triangulation that you are putting more attention on the data triangulation, or the theoretical triangulation that concerns about the paradigms that are post-positive or constructivism. So when do you conduct a mixed method study? So the general case is first and when you have, of course, the both types of data, qualitative and quantitative, available. But after that, you have to see if the phenomenon it is necessary to carry out a mixed method research design, and also you have to put like the validation because you are doing the mixed method research design. So also when one type of research, qualitative or quantitative, is not enough to address the research problem or answer the research questions. For example, you see that it is properly better to have the qualitative and the quantitative part in order to see if we can better understand the scope of a very complex topic or phenomenon. So it is also when, okay, this is related with the theoretical characteristics, but okay, sometimes it is better to use quantitative or qualitative in order to construct like the instrument to gather the information. For example, you want to make a very good survey in order to have the questions that people feel comfortable at the time this survey is being implemented. So you can previous pilot like an interview about, okay, what would be the questions that you would like to be asked in a survey about this topic. So you are taking advantages or the qualitative part in order to construct the instrument of collecting the quantitative part. So you see how these two methodologies work together. So also you use mixed methods when you want to provide an alternative perspective in a study. Like a common example could be like, okay, the police officer asks a person for the numbers of the statistics of the right crimes in the city, and also they collected the testimonies of the story from the victims. So in this case, the police officer has the perspective of a very condensed part, that is the quantitative of the information, and a very specific, that is like the story. So they have to make the relationship, and that also happens in the field of mixed method research design. So strengths and weaknesses, that this is related a lot with triangulation. In it, okay, they tend to see the strengths and weaknesses. Like first, we're going to start with the strengths, that is increasing the strengths while eliminating the weaknesses. So, for example, so some researchers tend to see that, okay, the qualitative information is not really, doesn't have a really good big credibility, so because it's too context and provide a very large population, that sometimes it is not necessary to take the whole population on board to make the study. So what the researchers do, okay, they say, okay, with the use of a survey of a quantitative instrument, they can consider to cancel out and make the qualitative population smaller in order to make better the generalization and in order to have better quantitative outcomes. That is like the main of the study. Also, multiple level analysis of complex issues. That is, okay, this is when you started to see an issue or a phenomenon that is too complex. So it is better to see it from the qualitative and the quantitative. So in some cases, okay, studies put more reliability to the numbers and the statistics, or can happen vice versa, that numbers provides like a more general perspective of the stories and the interviews that the qualitative part is about. Also improve the validity, that is okay, inside of the research community, the qualitative and quantitative use can also to increase the validity and the credibility of your study in front of other researchers. Also reaching multiple audiences, that is, okay, always there are some researchers that tend to focus more on a qualitative or the quantitative part. So in this example, you can provide very good information from these kind of populations, and you can make that your research project using mixed method research designs provides like more, I don't know, like more advantages for both, like the ones that are more interested in quantitative and also for the ones that are more interested in the qualitative part. So you can provide like benefits for these both different audiences. And also it is composite research as, okay, this is like the weaknesses, that is also it is a very weakness that is, okay, when you are conducting a mixed method research design, it is like kind of complicated because you need to be really trained in both qualitative and quantitative data collection. So if you don't have any experience before you are starting to conduct your mixed method research design, the mixed method research designs will be like a complete mess. So you need to be really trained and you need to be really concerned how the both methodologies works separately. So you need to understand everything, the philosophical assumptions, the procedures, and all even the strengths and weaknesses from each qualitative and quantitative methodologies in order to carry out a very good mixed method research designs. And also that is really challenging, and that is also really time consuming. So if you are planning to conduct for the first time a mixed method research design, I advise you that you do it like in a research team, because trust me that, okay, it is really good to have a mixed method research design in your curriculum, but also it is like kind of challenging, so you need to be careful. And also, if you don't know, please wait until you have the specific training in qualitative and quantitative gathering methodology. So also we have to talk about the key factors of mixed method research design. Provide a rationale for the design. Okay, this is something that later that in the presentation we are going to see how all these key factors change according to the type of mixed method research design. So for example, provide a rationale for the design is that, okay, you need to set why you are conducting a mixed method research design. What are the reasons that push you to conduct a mixed method research design in order to analyze better the phenomenon that you wanted to study. So you need to see, okay, I want to do that because this and this, because it is necessary, it is pertinent to combine qualitative and quantitative. Okay, include collecting qualitative and quantitative data. Okay, you need to say what kind of qualitative and quantitative data you are going to collect while doing the study, and also you need to consider priority, and you need to consider the sequence. So priority means that, okay, you are also, okay, if it is necessary that you focus more on the qualitative and quantitative, and if you are going to use more qualitative on quantitative, so you are going to prioritize one method instead of the other. And also the sequence, if you are going to collect first qualitative on quantitative part. So it is up to the kind of mixed method research design. So this is something that is going to be explained later. Consider priority. So you can make questions that may you to recognize when research design consider what a study instead of the other. So they work more on that studies. Like for example, what do you emphasize more in the purpose statement, exploration or prediction of the outcomes? Which data collection process, quantitative or qualitative, do you give the most attention? For example, if you are making more attention of number of pages in a report or in the methods and results sections. Which data collection process do you examine in the most depth? So that you make more emphasis and you provide more visual aids in the methodology, in the data collection, that you say, okay, in this part I want to focus more because it is better, but the other, it is also useful, because there are some times where some mixed method research design focus on the outcome that is represented in quantitative way, but also all the process in order to achieve this quantitative is explained like in a narrative qualitative way. For example, it's on cases when you see students' protocols that they describe how the students obtain these quantitative statistics and numbers that, okay, in the qualitative part they started like a narration of everything that the students do, if even they speak loud, if they stand out during the exam or something like that. But in this case, you are making more emphasis on the qualitative than in the outcomes. But that's why you need to say why you are doing that, the purpose. Also, when you need, okay, consider sequence and match the data analysis to the design. So this is something that also is like the variation, like is variable instead of the different kind of method research designs. That, for example, to examine options for data analysis reflect on the type of design. Okay, you need to consider what kind of design is this, and also to match the data analysis to the design. And the options for analysis between each design, that this is something that is not similar in other kind of research designs. So how to identify a mixed method research design? That, okay, before we start seeing the kind of mixed method research designs, so you need to know these like key concepts when you are facing a paper, in order that you recognize the kind of mixed method designs you are going to read, because there are a lot of, they are like seeds, I think. So if there is any evidence in the title, so you can look among the title if there is a keyword that may help you to recognize if you are reading a methodology that is combining qualitative and quantitative data. Sometimes there are really, I don't know, obvious that they put mixing inside the title, so this is a very good key factor. Or embedding or triangulation also, they use that. Is there evidence in the data collection, in the data collection section? So for example, if they started to see pictures, narrative, stories, also diagrams, or numbers, table with numbers, so you see that there is a difference between the section for the qualitative and the quantitative. So if you see this image, you immediately know that you are facing a mixed method research design, because they both qualitative and quantitative part are present. Also, is there is evidence in the purpose statement of the research questions, because there are some research questions that when you started to analyze it, and there are the research questions that can be divided in order to see, okay, this part is going to be focused on the qualitative and the other is going to be focused more on the quantitative, so you can know if there's a mismatch with design also doing that procedure. And also you start making questions that what priority or weight does the research give to the quantitative and qualitative data collection? This question is related to the priority. So which data collection have more importance at the time of seeing and trying to ramble the problem related to the research topic inside the study. Also, what is the sequence of collecting the quantitative and qualitative part? This is like the sequence that, okay, I want to focus more in the first part, collecting qualitative, and the other collecting quantitative. And how does the research actually analyze the data, if they are using triangulation, embedding, mixing, if they are only just comparing, and at the end they are going to support, or they are going to create like an instrument based on the other part of the research presentation. And where in the study does the research miss the data? So if it is at the end, at the beginning, so this is something that tend to change. So, well, that this is the part of knowing what kind of mismatched research designs are you going to face. So now my partner Mauricio Pájaro is going to explain you is going to deep down into what are the kinds or what are the types of mismatched research designs that are really common inside of the landscape of educational research. So, thank you.